Hello and welcome. Rob and Daniel here. We are here to help you as doctors become more successful in your 3D workflow. Rebel 3D seeks to empower doctors to rebel against their 3D problems to make a better life for themselves, their staff, and their patients. So today, we're going to solve a couple problems with exocad crown design. Daniel, thank you for being with us. Tell us, what are those problems that we're going to solve today?
So, in my experience, the three main problems that people run into is taking too long to design a crown. We're going to focus on single crowns right now. Also, not understanding the tools of the exocad softwares to ease to make the entire process a lot easier. And then the last thing is once people get acquainted with the tools, then they start to overwork the design, and then they end up destroying what they've already built. So those are the three main problems I see.
Awesome. So today we're going to save time, help utilize the tools of the software, and prevent overworking the crown. So why don't you take it away and show us what you got and how we can help doctors?
Excellent. All right. So I'm going to be using exocad's demo case just so that everybody has access to it in case they want to follow along. One of the things that the way we're going to do this, I'm going to show you what the design could look like, and then we're going to slow down and I'm going to explain every tool that I used and the logic, at least in my head, as to how to utilize the software to achieve this result.
All right. So show us how fast you can design a case, Daniel.
All right. So speed test, speed run right here.
Speed run. Let's see what you got.
All right. Let's get the software to launch. All right. So the very first thing is to draw the margin. Now, because this is a demo case, the margin has already been drawn, but I'll go through the process of drawing it myself and making small corrections where needed. Now, can move on to the next step. Make sure that my insertion direction is correct, or as correct as we can manage it. And the next step is to have the software load the library that we want to use, and I can make changes to that if I want to. There's a few things that I pay attention in this particular step to make my job a little bit easier, and then I will explain those here when we go through all the details. Um, and then it's just a matter of understanding the tools here so that I don't have to waste as much time um, moving the mouse around, but I can just get directly to where I need to go. I can do small corrections here and there just to make things look a little bit better. My contents have already been adapted, and that will be it.
Wait, so
That's
you're
my crown.
done?
Yeah.
Let's QC this crown really quick. What contact values did you achieve?
So we'll go through that
Okay.
as we break down
Okay.
the design.
Man, so you did this demo case in about 2 minutes. What do you think is, what should a doctor target as how many minutes per design if he's designing himself?
I think you should try to aim to be around the 5 minute mark. If you could do it faster than that, better. But 5 minute per crown should be about as much time as you should spend on a single unit.
Oh, 5 minutes. That's very respectable to achieve a design in 5 minutes. I'd say 5 to 10 minutes is very respectable even. So, all right, Daniel, why don't you walk us through again? Show us the
Okay.
tools of the software, how you use it, why you use it that way, and just explain how to achieve this, 5 minute crown design.
Gladly. So, thing number one is let's tackle uh, the second problem that people run into is not understanding exocad's tools. And to me, it is paramount for you to be using your left hand on your keyboard. So the
Okay.
hotkeys for access make a world of difference. Excuse me. When exocad finally implemented hotkeys to the software, it cut my design time in half. So being able to keep my eye directly on what I'm designing, and I have to move my eyes over here to the right to look at the tool that I need to select and then come back, that saves a ton of time. So being able to access all those tools in there using my keyboard, as you can see here,
So
makes a world of difference.
two-handed design. right
Yes,
hand on the mouse, left hand on the hotkeys. So tell us what
correct.
hotkeys you use.
Good. The two hotkeys that you want to focus on, even though there's tons of them, but the two hotkeys you want to focus on is Control and Shift. So I
Okay.
usually keep my pinky and ring finger on those two keys, and I will access those keys throughout the design a lot.
So
Okay.
why don't you do some design steps and tell us when you're
Okay.
using the Control and Shift key.
Good. So I'm going to click here on the margin if I want to make any corrections. Rather than taking my eye off here and go here to correct and draw, I can just press the 2 key on my keyboard, and it takes me directly to where I can move these points around and make my corrections. So that'll be 1. Okay. Then once my margin is perfect, I will press Control and Spacebar to go next, rather than again moving my mouse away and clicking on the next button and having to do that. Here, it's understanding how to set your insertion direction. You access that by right clicking and selecting the insertion
Nope.
direction.
So there's no hotkey for insertion direction?
There isn't. So
Okay.
that
Maybe
now
soon.
what you can do, however, is you can make the insertion direction be part of the workflow, so that the software always brings you here as it's guiding you through the design process.
That's
So
awesome.
that is something that can be customized, and that could be easily done. Um, you correct your insertion direction, and then this is one of the steps that people tend to waste a lot of time in, because they want to figure out, okay, so what's the right number for all of these values that control the fit of my crown. And the exocad derived this number is not randomly or arbitrarily. They actually did a lot of R&D to figure out what would be a good average. And in my personal business, I have about 80 doctors that I work for in different parts of the world. I don't know their manufacturing processes at all, but I know that with exocad's default values, I've had to make no changes to those values except for 2 doctors who were extremely picky. Besides that, the default values will give you a good, at the very least, I will say, a good enough result for the vast majority of manufacturing processes out there. So you can
Nice.
rest assured you don't have to go through here and figure out what changes you need to make to all of these. In fact, I typically get to this point and just click next. I don't worry about cement space or anything like that. Now, once you get here, here's where you start using Control and Shift a lot. So in this particular step called the place model tooth, there are 4 things that you should focus on. exocad works from doing big changes down to the details. And so this is one of the places where you're doing the big changes. And so if you focus on these 4 points here, and those only, control your OCD because it'll come up, you'll be about 80% done with your design. So here you want to focus on the size of your crown, the long axis of your crown, your buccal corridor to all be in harmony, and typically your buccal custom. If you get all those in harmony, then 80% of your case is going to be done for you. The other
Nice.
20% I will divide between choosing the right library that gives you the anatomy that you like and doing your contacts.
How much
But
time do you spend choosing the library?
so that's a point of contention among some people, because everybody should have their own set of teeth, and you should customize that for everybody. However, I have over 300 libraries installed in my software, and if I was to flip
Of
through
course you do.
300 options every time I design a single crown, then I would be spending hours per case. So I've personally have narrowed down my libraries to 4, maybe 5 of them, and 2 of those are exclusively for anterior cases.
Are these
So
libraries you created or that you
no,
just curated?
these are just the libraries that come standard with the software. Now, the problem with this argument is that whether the library I pick is good is a subjective matter, what you
Sure.
like, what you don't like. So whatever it is, I think that you should narrow down your library selection to about 3, 4, maybe 5 libraries tops.
Sounds like we'll need another Rebel 3D podcast on library
Sure,
selection. We
absolutely.
should do that. Okay.
So here again, I'm going to focus on those 4 points only. So
Perfect.
my first point of view, or my first thing to consider, is the size of the crown. I want to make sure that my contacts are closed. Here's where I start using the hotkeys rather than going here and choosing the different tools that I want to select. With Shift, I can scale the crown, and with Control, I can rotate it. Okay. For those of you who are just starting to use exocad, when you do rotation, it can be very confusing. This was the part that took me the longest to get down to, like, second nature. If your movements are just circles and you're patient enough, the crown will eventually get to the position that you want. So as you learn movement, that's the best way to go about it. Just do circles, either clockwise or counterclockwise.
You just reverse the crown 180 degrees.
Right. No. And so and just doing circles, And if your circles are bigger, then you move things faster. And so you'll find the right
rhythm.
Yeah, the right rhythm. Yeah. So, but circles, Control and circles, like a little bit of rotate.
Like Daniel's
wax on. Yeah.
Wax off. Perfect.
So that's my first focus is make sure that my crown is the right size, meaning I have both mesial and distal contacts. And from this point of view, it makes sense. From this point of view, it makes sense. So any change that you make in the software, you have to double and triple check from as many points of view as possible. Okay. So, for example, if I have my crown like this, if I'm looking at the case like this, and I just want to bring my crown straight up occlusally, because I'm looking at this diagonally, and because of the screen being a 2D plane, if I pull this up, I'm also going to be pushing it lingually.
Yep. So your point of view matters
a lot. Yep. And so you want your point of view to be as perpendicular as possible to the movement you want to make.
The axis is perpendicular to your point of view.
Correct. And so if I want to move my crown straight up occlusally, then I want to look at it as straight from the side as possible, and then I can just move it up and down. There'll be no side movement. Okay?
Makes sense.
So we get the size of the crown correct. Again, I'm checking it from every point of view possible that would matter for that particular point I'm going for. The second would be the long axis. I want to make sure that it's in harmony with the rest of the case. I wouldn't want my crown to be sitting like this because it's no longer in harmony. So trying to find that point where the long axis looks good with the rest of the case. And then the next thing would be to look at my buccal corridor and make sure that the height of contour is in harmony. And then also my custom. So maybe I could rotate this out just a tiny little bit, something along those lines. And that should put me about 90% there. Okay, so I can double check by flipping the model upside down that I have contacts, and I know that I'm getting some contacts there. People tend to get hung up on things like this where, oh, what's going to happen there? I'm telling you, if you just focus on these 4 things, all those things will go away.
Because it's going to connect to margin later, right?
Correct. The software will do it automatically. Also, any other detail that you look at here, like, for example, my marginal ridge is on level. Yes, you're right. But unfortunately, you just don't have the right tools to fix that right now. So there's no point on focusing on.
So remind us in this step, what are the 4 things we're focused on?
Size, long axis, buccal corridor, buccal cuspes. And that is true for upper and lower. So if you make sure that your buccal cuspes kind of follow that ideal smooth arch, then you should be in a good place. All right. Wonderful. So when you go next from this step, notice that problem we're getting hung up on, the software will fix on its own. It will adapt the crown there, and it's all taken care of. And so now we just made the big changes of the entire anatomy of the crown, and now we're going to move more into the details. Now, if a rule of thumb in exocad is the more and more perfect work you do in the current step, the less work you'll have to do in the subsequent steps. So here, we should have very little to do. So look at my contacts. I'm going to have to address that, and maybe a little thing here or there. Maybe that incline there is a little too prominent. That should be about it. If you find yourself here digging in your anatomies and making sure that things look really pretty, may I suggest that you just chose the wrong library? You don't really like that library. That's why you want to change it so much.
How often are you carving secondary anatomy?
I'm going to say maybe in 10% of my cases.
Yeah.
Again,
And also the milling bird that's being used, right?
right,
It's got to be small enough to even capture that detail,
right.
right?
And that's another thing that I harp about is if you frequent any of exocad, I don't know, exocad groups on Facebook or anything like that, you will see that people create these very intricate and very tiny um, uh, grooves and make things look absolutely stunning. But then the question should be: are you manufacturing that, or you just did it for the likes? And if you did it
Yeah.
for the likes, great job. But if that's not going to get manufactured by any mill machine on Earth. There's nothing that can mill something that big.
Unless we're 3D printing crowns, which that's
There
a
you go.
whole nother discussion.
Correct. Correct.
But
And
yeah.
so taking all those things into consideration will help you make choices throughout your design process so you don't waste time doing things that your manufacturing process is not going to give you. And personally, and uh, this is one of the reasons I like the alternative library, is because I don't care if you're using an MCXL with a 1 millimeter diameter tool, or you're using a 5 axis tool that will use a 0.3 millimeter burr. This is an anatomy that you will get from any machine. And so it's very predictable to me and to the client. So if I design a crown for you and you look at this and you like the way it looks, that's exactly what you get out of any mill machine that you have. Excuse me. So now that we're here, we'll just detail little things.
So
So
what are we focused on in this final step where you're doing your small adjustments? What are you looking for?
So again, the details and the main, to me, the details that I focus on are the ones that make the crown functional. So my marginal ridges need to be leveled, and then my contacts need to be there. I need to have good draw, and my crown can't be high, too low, completely out of occlusion. So I need to strike that balance based on my client's preferences. So first thing I'm going to do is level the the marginal ridges. To do that, in my opinion, you should lock your cut tips. So I'm going to use Control T. That will turn on that tool right there. And then I'm going to use tooth parts, which would be tool number 5. So I can switch the using my keyboard, and then I can just pull this down until I'm somewhat out of occlusion, and then go to the other side and do about the same thing. Now, I want to make sure that my marginal ridges look good from every point of view that I want to address it from, and that should about do it. So, as far as I'm concerned, my crown is pretty much done at this point. Gosh, just
Wow.
coming out of a cold.
That's all
So,
right.
what we need to do now is just make sure that our contacts are there, and if you've done your work correctly and your contacts are the way that they're supposed to be, or the size that they're supposed to be, given the draw that the case gives you, by pressing Control X, you will make the adaptation to all the contacts. And so now with
And
one,
and where are those contact setting located?
good. So if you press the 3 key, it'll take you to the Adapt tool, and those are your contact settings here.
Nice.
And your my occlusion is set at 0.1 millimeter out of occlusion, and
Okay.
my inner proximals are set at 0. This should give you a good snap when you floss. Okay,
So
so
what's common in the exocad universe for, so is it 0? Is it
yeah,
-1? Like what do you see?
so again, these are the default values that the software gives, and I rarely ever change those.
Okay.
Okay, so whatever the software gives me, that's exactly what I'll use. And unless my client says, "Hey, things are too tight, things are too high," then I'll start making changes. But again, that has rarely ever happened to me. Okay,
Awesome.
so now my crown is designed. Uh, Usually, if we're not careful, we'll create situations like this, and I'll just over exaggerate the point just to show it. When you do your contact adaptation, you'll
Uh,
end up with a concave contact, which is
s-
very typical. So
Smooth it
what
out a
you
little
need to
bit.
do is just smooth out around the contact itself, so you can bring it into a more flat
Yeah.
position or surface. Now, here's another point where I harp on. You can see that concavity because we just 1,000 times xed the size of this crown. And so, although you can still see a concavity, if I zoom this out to the actual size, that's no longer an issue.
Hmm.
And so that is the balance that needs to be found by the designer, where you don't focus on details that you can only see because you have the crown so big in front of you versus what you're
Yeah.
going to get in real life. And so if you can find that balance, then you will stop wasting time trying to detail things that don't really matter because they're not going to be
Yeah.
visible in real life.
Yeah. I mean, a broad, flat contact is ideal, but if it's got a
Correct.
very mild concavity, yes, you can see it in the software, but would you see it after it's milled?
Right.
Unlikely.
Correct.
So,
And so that'll be my point. That the last thing I'll just touch on here. Sometimes because of convergent or divergent adjacent teeth, you'll end up with situations where you could be building your crown into the undercut, creating
mm,
draw problems.
yeah.
exocad offers a really cool tool. So in the adapt tool, if you click on this little arrow here, you can say block out adjacents. And what the software will do is take the insertion direction that we established earlier and create these planes down the side of the
Downward
adjacent
plane.
crowns. And if I was to build my crown into that undercut, let's exaggerate the point, and I use that tool, the software will cut the crown back to make sure that my crown is not built into the undercut, and
So
therefore getting good draw.
this eliminates path of draw issues if you have
Correct.
teeth that are sort of tilting in and you've got a difficult, you know, emergence profile with your contacts.
Right.
I love that.
And so after that, you click next. Congratulations, there's your crown. You're all done.
Daniel, thank you. You've spent how many years teaching, learning exocad?
So I've been using the software for about 13 years. I started working on it with the first exocad distributor in the US. I worked at different labs throughout the country. Eventually, actually worked for exocad. I did all their tech support and training for the entire Western Hemisphere. And then I after I left exocad, I became the first exocad certified level 3 trainer in the US, I believe the Western Hemisphere as well. And
How
I
many
trained,
how many certified level 3 trainers are in the US that you know of?
I think there's 4 or 5 of us,
So
and
that
there's
means
probably about 12 of us in the world.
so that means you're
Um,
qualified to teach what modules within exocad?
I'm actually certified to teach in the entire exocad suite from implant planning to chairside to dental CAD, which is what we're looking at right now. So I'm certified to train on the entire
So
exocad suite.
any doctor with any license of exocad doing any type of prosthetic, you're qualified to train them.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Awesome.
sir.
That's amazing. So happy to have you be a part of the group. Doctors, for those of you joining us, you can find Daniel at rebel3d.com/Daniel. You can book time with him and engage with him in his services. He's here to help you solve your 3D problems, help you save time, utilize the software, utilize those hotkeys. And in reality, you should be able to design a single unit in about 5 minutes or less. Yeah, Daniel?
That's correct. That's correct.
Awesome. All right. Well, I can't wait for the next video on library selection. We'll do that one soon.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy.
We'll do
Thank you
it.